While there's certainly a lot of folks out there that celebrate rainbow, brown, and cutthroat trout, it's safe to say that at least within the United States, it is the brook trout that has the most devoted fan base. And they write about these little char. We're going to talk about 3 of those books today on Casting Across. Hi, I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Why do we love brook trout? Well, I grew up in Virginia fishing in the Shenandoahs, and so this was my fish. And for a lot of East Coast anglers, that's part of the allure. These are our native salmonids. These char are the fish that are supposed to be here on the East Coast. Beyond that, they can still be found all up and down the East Coast, even within an hour or so from major metropolitan areas. And I mean, they're just beautiful. And so consequently, we put them on anything and everything. Check out this vintage Orvis sweater, or have a brook trout belt. And doesn't stop there. We got brook trout socks today, and we're drinking out of a brook trout glass. Anything and everything has brook trout stripes and spots on it. But there's also plenty of books that explore brook trout. And today we're talking about 3. These are not the best 3, although one of them I would say is the best one. But we'll start with the newest volume, Searching for Home Waters by Michael Steinberg. This came out in 2023. I read it relatively recently, actually in the last month. And this is one man's journey from his home of Alabama up to where he vacationed in Maine, catching brook trout the whole way from Georgia up past Maine into Labrador. It is not really a narrative, it's a journal talking about his experiences, the fish he's pursuing, maybe only in 1 or 2 places. But what he does do a really good job of is giving a little bit of history for the state, its present situation for brook trout fishing, but then also kind of how all the different places where he's catching brook trout up the Appalachians have similarities and differences. It's a really good read in that respect, and it also features beautiful artwork from the talented Karen Talbot. She's the one who does the artwork for these angler pints. Definitely worth checking out. But this is a good, quick, fun read, and especially if you fish on the East Coast, a lot of the places in here are going to be places that you recognize. Another book that is in a good position for you to pick up if you want to catch more trout is Squaretail by Bob Mallard. Mallard is from Maine, and he is an advocate for native fish through the Native Fish Coalition. And Squaretail, it came out in 2019, and it's a guidebook, but not in the sense of a guidebook where, here's where you park, these are the flies to you in the spring, these are the flies to use in the summer. This talks all about the most important historic brook trout fisheries and contemporary brook trout fisheries all across the country, spanning from the East Coast even into the Midwest and some of the places where brookies have been introduced. Beautifully photographed. This is a book that is absolutely worth picking up. It has incredible historic value, and it's just a really, really good way to become acquainted with the current state of brook trout fishing here in the United States. But there's a book that Mallard points to, and that virtually everybody else points to as being the best book on brook trout, and that is Brook Trout by Nick Karras. This book came out in 1997. There are updated editions. I think this might have been the very first fly fishing book that I ever owned, and it is a fly fishing for brook trout textbook. It talks about their history, our history with them. It talks about how they have been adapted to the particular places they live and the differences between strains and subspecies of brook trout in their natural range. It talks about their historic range. It talks about some of the environmental issues that's facing these fish, both from human intervention as well as the introduction of other species. But it also celebrates these fish and the role that they've played in angling in the United States, and it talks about where they can be found today. This is the definitive work on the brook trout that you can find. I would put it at the very top of my list and any other brook trout angler's list. I would probably put Mallard's Squaretail in that top 3, definitely in the top 5. And rounding out maybe that top 10, I would put Searching for Home Waters somewhere in there. They all have their different role. They're all worth reading. what would be a book that you would add to this list? Maybe a book that would be in that top 3, or even a contender for the very top spot, although there's a lot of work to do to knock off Brook Trout. But I'd love to know. Put that in the comments down below. And then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.